Let's make stuffed sunburst squash. These are sunburst squash, a type of summer squash. I ordered the seeds from Burpee a couple of years ago and we really love them. These have gotten a little big, so I thought I would try to stuff them. The first thing I'm going to do is cut the tops off, and then I'm just using a spoon to scoop out the flesh and all the seeds out of the middle. I'm leaving about a 1/2 inch wall all the way around the sides and on the bottom of the squash. I'm going to save all of this to add to my stuffing mixture later. Now that all the squash are hollowed out, I'm going to spray them with cooking oil, season them with salt and pepper and some freshly dried basil. And I put these in a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes, or about how long it takes me to prepare the stuffing. So I'm using a pound of pork sausage and a pound of deer burger that I had in the freezer. If you had any ground meat already canned, you could use that to save time, but I do like to save those for weeknights when I'm kind of in a hurry. I started with just a little beef tallow in my pan. You could use any kind of oil really. And now I'm just browning the sausage and the deer burger. Once the meat is good and brown, I'm going to go ahead and add the flesh of the squash into my pan. I'm going to mix this really well and then put the lid on my skillet so that the squash can cook down and become tender. Then I remove the lid, and now the squash is completely cooked. I'm going to cook this without the lid on until all this liquid evaporates. Now that the liquid has cooked out, I'm going to add some of my garden spaghetti sauce that I made last year. I had a piece of a jar in the refrigerator, so I went ahead and used that, plus another quart. And I haven't seasoned anything up to this point because this spaghetti sauce was really well seasoned, and so I wanted to taste it first, and it was already good. And then I'm adding probably 3/4 of a block of cream cheese that I had in the refrigerator to give it a creamy texture and thicken my sauce up a little. I decided this needed a little more cheese, so I added about a 1/2 cup of mozzarella, about the same amount of cheddar. And at this point I tasted my sauce again to make sure it didn't need anything else before I started filling my squash. I probably could have just used 1 pound of meat. I didn't know when I started how far the sauce was going to go. I ended up only using about half of it, but that's fine. We'll eat the rest of this over pasta later in the week. Now that the squash is stuffed, I'm going to put it in the oven for another 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, the squash bowls are really starting to get tender, and so I'm going to top everything with a little bit more mozzarella and put it back in the oven until the cheese on top melts and gets bubbly. And that only took about 5 minutes. These were so good, and I think they turned out really pretty. That's it, stuffed sunburst squash.